Welcome all you sinners and sodomites to episode ... of Bible Stories for Atheists. I am Josh.
I'm Linz.
And we are your guides to the ... stories literarily littering the Bible. And we are covering 1 Samuel chapters 11 through 14
Yes.
in this episode.
Further adventures of the big, beautiful dummy.
The big, beautiful dummy called King Saul.
Saul. Better call Saul.
Better not call
Except
Saul.
not. Yeah.
Better
no.
not call Saul.
No.
That might have been a better title.
Better
for
not
this.
call Saul.
Yeah.
Too late. Unless you're going to cut out this entire part of the...
Yeah. We'll just stick with the title we were planning on. We find out about Saul's son,
Yeah.
Jonathan. We're introduced to him.
Which muddies the timeline a little bit.
I'm really confused about this whole timeline of
Yeah.
how old is Saul when he becomes king and
How much time has actually lapsed since...
since he became king.
And the story that we're talking about now.
Yeah,
Oh.
it's really odd. Yet again,
But not
they
because
give-
it's a consistent theme throughout the Bible.
Yeah.
Muddy timeline.
Yeah, it's always a problem.
Yeah.
So that's fun. So it was a pretty fun episode though, just talking through this stuff. So strap in and strap on for episode 54. God's not here, man.
You give that one more
Yeah.
pass. Yeah.
God's not here, man. I can't do this.
God's not here, man.
God, oh.
Why are you doing it like that? God.
It's because my throat's all fucked up from being at the end of this. God's not. I can't. I'm really good at this.
God's not here, man.
Yeah. God's not. You do it.
God's not here, man. God's not here, man.
Why is it so hard?
No.
Do I need to smoke some weed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dave's not here, man.
Yeah.
God's not here, man.
God's not here, man. That's the best we're going to get out of that. I
Pick
think.
one of those.
Yeah. Saul.
It depends on what you think about it. They're not saying I'm walking on the sun. That's a different song.
Yeah.
You could walk on sunshine outside right now because it's on the ground.
But as soon as you step on it, you're walking on shadow.
That
You're
is
walking
true.
on
You're right.
Yeah. The only way to walk on sunshine would be to like flip your feet up in the air, pointed at the sun.
Right.
Yeah. And then just wildly wave your legs around.
But then you're not walking.
No. So you have to be walking on the sun.
Yeah.
Much
But
like,
then it's not sunshine.
yeah.
The sunshine is the very specific like beams of sunlight.
Right.
That sun, it's the shine of the sun.
See, this is what I don't like. The unrealistic side of pop music. I feel like Neil deGrasse Tyson needs to do something
A breakdown of
about
the
this
song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shit on it like he shit on Titanic's stars for not being right. You remember that?
It's always funny to me when scientists are like, but this wasn't accurate in the movie. And
Yeah.
it's like, no one cares, Neil deGrasse Tyson. That movie made billions of dollars.
It was kind of funny where it's like, yeah, you're right. You are right. Nobody noticed but him. And other people who are like into astronomy probably.
Sure.
But like, then he also points out like how it was like mirrored. The stars were mirrored. The image, like they literally just did half of it and then flipped it and was like, nobody will notice and everything. And it's like, yeah. And they spent how much money on this movie?
Right.
And they did that with the stars?
Yeah, because no one cares. It has zero things to do with the movie.
Right.
You literally could have just taken a piece of paper, painted it black, stabbed some holes in it, shown some light through it, and most people would have not even fucking noticed that that's just what it was.
Yeah. I mean, it just destroys the realism to me.
Of Titanic?
Yeah. Yeah. But then they fixed it when they did a re-release.
Did they?
Yeah, they actually, because they figured out like exactly where the stars were that night and all that.
You know what that changed in the movie for me? Absolutely fucking nothing.
Oh, well, you and I are very different then.
Could somebody, I mean, literally the biggest controversy of that movie is like, he didn't have to die.
All of a sudden, I understood why he couldn't be on that door once the stars were right.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
This is totally jumping topics. I found something interesting online the other day that I thought of you.
Oh,
they this sounds really weird. So they found in Germany a 28,000-year-old stone dildo.
It is porn related.
It is kind of, yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing.
7.8 inch or 20 centimeters if you're into that kind of thing.
The metric system.
Yeah. And it was funny too, because right below that was a video of an orangutan driving a golf cart perfectly. And I was like, why did I ever believe in creationism?
Also, what's going on with your algorithms?
Yeah. Here's a stone dildo. Here's a monkey. Yeah.
So you said 28,000-year-old?
28,000-year-old.
Dildo.
Yeah. Very old. Very old dildo. Still in good shape.
Yeah. Do you like...
The lady was wearing gloves when she was holding it up.
I wonder... I wonder though, like, was it actually like a sex toy or object or something? Or was it like ornamental?
I don't know how they verify that.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a way that you can.
But what good would literally a polished stone thing that's like 7.8 inches long? That's like, what is that going to do? You know, like it's not a handle for anything. You know?
What if it's just literally like an idol though?
Yeah.
What if they just worshipped cock?
They probably worshipped it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know.
Or was it a male sex toy or was it a female sex toy?
Yeah, we don't know.
It
was probably both.
Was it up bums?
It's probably both.
Or the JJs.
Somebody did in the comments point out that it probably was passed down too.
Yeah.
You know, like you wouldn't just like get rid of it.
Was it literally just like, did it look like a penis?
I mean, the photo definitely did.
The head?
Like it didn't specifically have it. It kind of looked like, it was hard to tell.
Like a mushroom with a very small cap.
It kind of looked like, it looked cylindrical and then like there was a rounded top, right? But then it kind of looked like there might have been a carving, like drawing a line where the head, differentiating the head from the rest of the shaft.
Yeah.
But like not like really carved out or anything like that.
Gotcha.
And it's hard to tell too, like what could have been from damage over the years and stuff like that. But it was, you know, largely in good shape, you know.
Well, it just goes to show you that human sexuality is not a new thing.
No.
As much as fucking conservatives and prudes try to tell you that this explosion in humans and open human sexuality is like a brand new idea.
Yeah.
Fucking not. At all. 0%. In fact, we're probably way more conservative than like many societies were in the past.
Mm-hmm. I really feel like we lost a lot. Honestly, it was when religion probably popped up.
Oh, yeah.
Like that probably got rid of a lot of our free love. It had to have been more of a free love
America
society.
was founded on the idea that things were a little too liberal in England.
That's true. Yeah.
So they came over here to really pound out the fucking idea of anything fun.
Yeah, the Puritans.
And our society is still reflective of that today.
Right. Well, because the end of the world was coming so soon, you know. Can't enjoy your life with the end of the world coming.
All those crazy ass Puritans died and did not go to heaven or hell because they do not exist.
Right.
And that is how they lived their whole lives.
Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah.
It really is sad how, like, when you think of all the wasted lives that have, yeah. Previously on BSFA, the people told Samuel they want a king. And we met Saul, who was head and shoulders above everyone else.
Yes.
Samuel anoints Saul, but he's still not king, apparently, even though they all were like, long live the king.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, you know, I mean, you can say somebody is a king, and until the paperwork's signed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not legally binding.
Right. They had to fish him out of the baggage to.
Oh, he did not want this.
Yeah.
Nothing like putting a reluctant guy in charge.
Right. Yeah. What could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong by forcing a guy who does not want the job to do the job?
Right.
Well, I guess let's find out.
Yeah. Long live the chief. Now Nahash, king of the Ammonites, had been grievously oppressing the Gadites and the Reubenites. He would gouge out the right eye of each of them and would not grant Israel a deliverer. No one was left of the Israelites across the Jordan whose right eye Nahash had not gouged out. But there were 7,000 men who had escaped from the Ammonites and had entered Jabesh Gilead. About a month later, Nahash the Ammonite went up and besieged Jabesh Gilead. And all the men of Jabesh said to Nahash, "Make a treaty with us, and we will serve you." But Nahash the Ammonite said to them, "On this condition I will make a treaty with you, namely, that I gouge out everyone's right eye and thus put disgrace upon all Israel." The elders of Jabesh said to him, "Give us 7 days respite, that we may send messengers throughout all the territory of Israel. Then, if there is no one to save us, we will give ourselves up to you." When the messengers came to Gibeah of Saul, they reported the matter in the hearing of the people, and all the people wept aloud.
He's got a real fetish.
Yeah. So he gouges out the right eye of everyone across the Jordan in these two tribes, the Reubenites and the Gadites. No one of the Israelites were left without a right eye, except 7,000 who escaped.
Yeah. They weren't
counted among them.
Right, because they're the Jordan, and then these guys were on this side, and the 7,000 escaped to the other side.
To the other side, yeah. And then he really wants those eyes.
He really does.
Yeah.
They try to barter with him by being like,
give us 7 days.
Well, you will, don't kill us, and we'll praise loyalty to you or whatever.
Yeah, we'll make a treaty with you.
Yeah. And he's like, sure, but I need all of your eyes.
Right.
Just the right
everyone's
ones.
right eyes.
You'll still be like, it'll be fine. You'll still be able to see and work and do stuff, but you'll just be missing an eye. Your depth perception will be fucked. But you know what?
Have a hard time playing catch.
Yeah.
But,
we don't have cars, so it's cool. You don't got to drive.
Right.
Horses do all the work.
I kind of got the impression, like, I wonder if they were really good archers and he didn't want them to be able to like shoot bows. He
loved taking people's eyes out.
I guess, maybe. Yeah.
Like these trophies.
Right.
Did you think he had like a room of eyeballs?
A room of eyeballs. Everyone sees me.
Like in his bedroom.
He just walks in there. Yeah.
Like that's where he fucks.
Yeah.
Everyone's got to watch me.
Yeah. It's not where he jerks off. Just looking at all the eyes. So looking at him. Yeah.
That's a biblical horror story we need to create a movie about.
Right. Really, like you think, oh God, this is going off on a tangent. But I watch shitty Christian movies a little bit more than you do.
Yeah.
And
which is you watch them and I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they love to write in stuff that did not happen in the Bible, right? Course. They love throwing in their own stuff. And, it's the only way you can make the Bible interesting, as anyone who's listened to this podcast knows. Why don't they ever do stuff like that where it's like, let's really make this dude a psycho,
right? Yes,
like go that far, and they never do, because ultimately they can't put somebody jerking off to eyeballs everywhere in a Christian movie.
He's the villain. villain.
Yeah.
You're trying to.
We should make Christian movies.
Especially when you're trying to. That reminds me of that one movie we watched. But
yeah. The one where there's a parody of making Christian movies. Yeah. It was really good.
But they're trying to sell a story that you shouldn't masturbate.
Yeah.
So it would make sense to me to make this crazy villain of your story who's ripping out people's eyeballs. One of the things he does is masturbate, because then you could be like, see?
Yeah. See
how fucked up this is?
See? Yeah.
You don't want this. This is what happens when you start masturbating. You just need more and more eyes on you.
More and more eyeballs on you. Yeah.
Before you know it, you have an OnlyFans page. It's the modern version of that,
OnlyFans is basically the same as gouging out people's eyes and jerking off in front of them.
I feel like Christians could extrapolate to that point, though.
Yeah. Oh, they can go anywhere they want.
Right. I mean, I just did it for fun.
Right. This is why it'd be so easy to just start a cult. And finally, the thing that I found very ridiculous of this was they're like, give us 7 days.
And he's like, yes.
Yeah, to find somebody who's going to kick your ass for us. And he's like, sure, okay.
It's like when you're watching these 80s high school movies and the bully's like, I'm going to beat your ass at 3:00 after school. Yeah. And then you have 8 hours to like figure shit out.
Right, yeah.
Okay, I will just, I don't know, go home now?
Yeah. Now Saul was coming from the field behind the oxen. Saul said, "What is the matter with the people, that they are weeping?" So they told him the message from the inhabitants of Jabesh. And the Spirit of God came upon Saul in power when he heard these words, and his anger was greatly kindled. He took a yoke of oxen and cut them in pieces, and sent them throughout all the territory of Israel by the messengers, saying, "Whoever does not come out after Saul and Samuel, so shall it be done to his oxen." Then the dread of the Lord fell upon the people, and they came out as one. When he mustered them at Bezek, those from Israel were 300,000, and those from Judah were 70,000. They said to the messengers who had come, "Thus shall you say to the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead, tomorrow, by the time the sun is hot, you shall have deliverance." When the messengers came and told the inhabitants of Jabesh, they rejoiced. So the inhabitants of Jabesh said, "Tomorrow we will give ourselves up to you, and you may do whatever seems good to you." The next day Saul put the people in 3 companies. At the morning watch they came into the camp and cut down the Ammonites until the heat of the day. And those who survived were scattered, so that no 2 of them were left together. Saul came in and kicked their ass.
Well, after threatening everyone in his own very fucked up form of the draft.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't come join us, we're going to cut up your ass. I cut up these oxen, and I sent them to you. And if you don't come out of your fucking house when I come to get you, I'm going to do this to your ox.
Right. And I realized, like, oh, that's because he's not king yet. This is the only way he can really command people is by threatening them.
Yeah.
Really.
Right.
You know? So.
Also, like, I don't know that part even matters. I still think he might have done it. Even if he was king, quote unquote.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I still think he might have threatened, because listen, just because someone says you're a king doesn't mean you know what the fuck you're doing.
Right.
Especially when you were hiding in baggage to avoid doing it in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're filled with the rage of God.
Yeah. And he never seems resistant to it at this point.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Right.
Like, he's never hiding from it.
Oh, like he was given like concubines and like gold.
Maybe by this point, yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, apparently God's made you with their puppet, right? Because if you're filled with the rage of God, that means God's just using you to act through.
Right.
Basically, he was like, fine. You don't want me? You don't want me to be your king? God? You don't want me, God, to be your king? Fine, we'll get this big, beautiful dummy, and I'll just wear him like a fucking meat puppet. How about that?
First thing to do.
This is how God
You have
works.
to kill people for me. Why why can't you just do this again? Like, why is it that we have to kill other people?
That's essentially how it works. Shut up.
Yeah. The people said to Samuel, "Who is it that said, 'Shall Saul reign over us?' Give them to us so that we may put them to death." But Saul said, "No one shall be put to death this day. For today the Lord has brought deliverance to Israel." Samuel said to the people, "Come, let us go to Gilgal and there renew the kingship." So all the people went to Gilgal, and there they made Saul king before the Lord in Gilgal. There they sacrificed offerings of well-being before the Lord, and there Saul and all the Israelites rejoiced greatly.
Wait, how did that start?
How did it start?
Yeah, what was the first sentence?
The people said to Samuel, "Who is it that said, 'Shall Saul reign over us?' Give them to us so that we may put them to death."
Are they talking about the unpleasant fellows or whatever the fuck they were called?
The worthless fellows.
The ones who were like, "I don't want this."
It's whoever is dissenting from Saul being
It feels like a real weird thing to just throw in there. Like, it's not connected to what just happened.
No, I think what they're doing is they're emphasizing that Saul is like, I don't care about them. Like, people, haters gonna hate, and let's move on. We don't need to put anybody to death over not liking it. Yeah.
I mean, all right, cool.
Yeah. It's a good policy.
It is a good policy not to just kill somebody because they don't like you.
Yeah. That's what I look for in a president.
Yeah.
Not everybody does, but that's what I look for. They're talking about going to Gilgal again, and they're renew the kingship, which I don't understand. Like, why is it renewing the kingship? Is he already king? Like, what is it that's going on here?
Yeah.
So either way, it sure sounds like he is king now.
Yes, that is what it sounds like.
You don't cook the meat, I cook the meat. In chapter 12, Samuel gives a retirement speech because he's, quote, old and gray, unquote. Mm-hmm. He starts off asking, has he ever stolen from anyone or defrauded anyone so that he can make it right? And, quote, they, unquote, as in all of Israel, I don't know, say that he hasn't defrauded anyone. Then he rehashes the Lord bringing Moses and Aaron and all the people out of Egypt. He rehashes the book of Judges and how the Israelites would abandon Yahweh and the judges would have to save them. And we get, quote, and the Lord sent Jerubbaal and Barak and Japheth and Samson and rescued you out of the hand of your enemies on every side. And you lived in safety. So Barak is the dude from the story of Deborah and Jael. Okay. You remember that story? Yep. The only female judge, Deborah. Right. And Jael was the one who killed that one dude by like putting a tent spike in his brain, basically, right? Yep. Barak was the military guy that was supposed to just be carrying out orders from Deborah. And yet he gets a call out in this.
Not Deborah.
And Deborah does not, nor does Jael. Yeah, it's a really interesting thing. Right. Like, is that story of Deborah the one that he would have read,
Yeah, right.
Yeah, or is he just being sexist and not talking about the women?
Sure sounds like it.
Probably.
Just means that the story of Deborah was probably changed later to be like, what we're missing in these?
Yeah. And again, the poem version of the story of Deborah is one of the oldest.
Right.
They think might be one of the oldest scripts in the Bible. And then finally he says, if you stop following God, then he will bring his wrath against the Israelites and their king. So God's not just coming after the people, he'll come after the king as well. Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So that was chapter 12. Chapter 13 was where we're going to actually pick up the story. But then it immediately starts with this line. Saul was ... years old when he began to reign, and he reigned ... and 2 years over Israel.
What?
Yeah, it's really weird.
Did you check to see if other versions?
I did. So apparently, this is believed to be an error when they were copying the oldest available Hebrew manuscript of the book of Samuel. You would think that this is an obvious example of the inerrant Bible being errant. But in a lot of versions, like the NIV, what you'll see is Saul was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned over Israel 42 years. The reason they say this is because in Acts, in the New Testament, Acts 13:21, it says that Saul reigned for 40 years. And apparently, they just kind of pulled Saul being 30 years old out of their ass. Like, there's just no good reason for them saying that. But if you're someone who thinks the Bible is inerrant and you have an NIV, then you're probably not even going to notice this.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And if you're Jewish, then you don't have Acts to reference to say. Like,
so would it just say, like, the Torah says, like, the ...
Basically, probably. Yeah.
Why not just take the whole sentence out of it, since it literally means nothing now?
It had to have been an issue when they were copying, I don't know if these numbers are right. We'll check them later, and then they never did.
Yeah. Or there's it got smudged.
Right. Yeah.
So you just couldn't read it or something. I don't know. But why not just fucking take the whole sentence out then?
Yeah, there's so many.
Since it literally means nothing now because there's no numbers in it except for 2 years.
Right. So there's that. Okay. There's that very obvious error in the unerring Bible. Mm-hmm. So here's the actual story. Saul chose 3,000 out of Israel. 2,000 were with Saul in Michmash and the hill country of Bethel, and 1,000 were with Jonathan in Gibeah. The rest of the people he sent home to their tents. Jonathan defeated the garrison of the Philistines that was at Geba, and the Philistines heard of it. And Saul blew the trumpet throughout the land, saying, "Let the Hebrews hear." When all Israel heard that Saul had defeated the garrison of the Philistines, and also that Israel had become odious to the Philistines, the people were called out to join Saul at Gilgal. And we find out in the next few paragraphs that Jonathan is Saul's son. Just to be clear. Not sure why they didn't mention it sooner, but it sounds like he's...
Oh, right. So he must have had a kid, even at the beginning when he went looking for donkeys.
Right. A
kid who's old enough to be
you kind of think of him as a young kid himself throughout all of it, but he must have already been in his 30s or 40s, probably 40s, because it sounds like Jonathan is leading people in battle and stuff. Right.
But I hate it when they tell, I hate all of these stories, but because it makes it feel like no time has passed. Right? Like he just was made king.
I think at least a month has gone past.
But okay, so
between when Samuel anointed him and told him what was going to happen and him actually becoming king was at least a month.
Right.
I think.
But now how long has it been since that and now this part of the story?
Yeah.
Because so if you are reading the NIV and it does say he was 30 years old when he became king and not ...
Right.
And he has a son who's old enough. Did he have this child when he was 10? Or is a 15-year-old? Did you have it when you were 15 and a 15-year-old is old enough to run a
troop? Yeah.
I
don't know.
The arbitrary picking of 30 gets real weird then if you don't know how long time has gone since he became king and when this particular story is happening.
Right.
Because those ages do not work out math-wise.
Right. Yeah.
Unless you're talking about kids.
Right.
Having kids or kids leading armies.
Mm-hmm.
Either one of those is not great.
Right. You could see it being the case that Jonathan might have been 15.
Right.
But unlikely.
Yeah.
So Saul is probably 40s or 50s actually at this point.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's more stuff that they really should have filled in the details on. But for some reason they didn't, and probably because it's not real.
Not real. Yeah. You get no mention of before this of him having children or being married or any of that stuff.
Right. the Philistines mustered to fight with Israel. 30,000 chariots and 6,000 horsemen, and troops like the sand on the seashore in multitude. They came up and encamped at Michmash. When the Israelites saw that they were in distress, for the troops were hard pressed, the people hid themselves in caves and in holes and in rocks and in tombs and in cisterns. Some Hebrews crossed the Jordan to the land of Gad and Gilead. Saul was still at Gilgal, and all the people followed him trembling. He waited 7 days, the time appointed by Samuel. But Samuel did not come to Gilgal, and the people began to slip away from Saul. So Saul said, "Bring the burnt offering here to me, and the offerings of well-being." And he offered the burnt offering. As soon as he had finished offering the burnt offering, Samuel arrived, and Saul went out to meet him and salute him. Samuel said, "What have you done?" Saul replied, "When I saw that the people were slipping away from me, and that you did not come within the days appointed, and that the Philistines were mustering at Michmash, I said, 'Now the Philistines will come down upon me at Gilgal, and I have not entreated the favor of the Lord.' So I forced myself and offered the burnt offering." Samuel said to Saul, "You have done foolishly. You have not kept the commandment of the Lord your God, which he commanded you. The Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. But now your kingdom will not continue. The Lord has sought out a man after his own heart, and the Lord has appointed him to be ruler over his people because you have not kept what the Lord commanded you." And Samuel left and went on his way from Gilgal. The rest of the people followed Saul to join the army.
Well, that turned quickly.
Yeah, it did.
Just because he set some cow on fire.
Yeah.
Literally. So Samuel's late, and Saul's so worried that the people are going to turn against him that he offers a burnt offering, but he's not supposed to do a burnt offering.
Right, because he's not a priest.
Right. So that pissed God off.
Right.
Says Samuel.
The priest.
And instantly is like,
anybody can offer a sacrifice?
Yeah.
What are we, fucking gonna just descend into madness if we do that?
And then he's basically
all of a sudden his job security seemed a little shaky.
Yeah. So he fires Saul.
Yeah.
But not because Saul's still king. But
he is still king.
But Samuel is basically like, someone's coming for your job.
Right. Which is really interesting that he's mentioning that.
Yeah. God's chosen somebody else. But we don't this is not something that's happened yet.
Right.
So
he just found out Saul did it.
Right. So
when did God tell him?
Right. So Samuel's 100% is making this up.
Right.
He's butthurt.
Because again, this is the only way priests make money, really, is off of doing sacrifices for people. Or it's like how they make most of their food.
Sure.
Get most of their food and stuff. So
or he's trying to cover up, like, you know how when somebody does something wrong and then they gaslight you into making you feel like you're the reason why they did something wrong, or the reason why the whole of the situation is your fault.
Right.
But he was late.
Yeah.
He's
going to make it seem like it's not because he was late.
Right.
It's because Saul.
No matter how late I am, you can't do this. Right. You know that, right?
Right.
Like,
oh, you really pissed off God.
I mean, honestly, you should all just die.
Yeah.
And not sacrifice something. Like, if the thing that happens is that you get attacked by the Philistines and they kill you all because I'm late, well, then that is what happens.
Yeah.
You do not sacrifice burnt offerings to God. You die instead. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about it. Sorry I was late, but that's not a good reason for you to do what you did.
Yeah. One thing that's weird too is in the last episode we talked about when Samuel first met Saul.
Oh, the 7 days?
Yeah. And he said, give me 7 days before when you get to Gilgal and everything. So he talks about that. But then that we never heard about.
But now we do.
Him. But now we do. And it's at least a month, but probably, as we were talking about earlier, probably years later.
Right.
That we get to this point, and he's talking about meeting him in 7 days in Gilgal again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And weird. So it's just an interesting thing.
It's like they cut and pasted different parts of the story
together
where it seemed like it fit fit better.
Yeah.
But they overlooked shit like
this. They did really bad editing.
Yeah.
Saul counted the people who were present with him, about 600 men. Now, there was no smith to be found throughout the land of Israel, for the Philistines said, "The Hebrews must not make swords or spears for themselves." So all the Israelites went down to the Philistines to sharpen their plowshares, mattocks, axes, or sickles. So on the day of the battle, neither sword nor spear was to be found in the possession of any of the people with Saul and Jonathan. But Saul and his son Jonathan had them. Basically, everybody was probably armed with farm equipment, is what I think they're trying to say there, except for Saul and Jonathan, who actually had proper
swords. Yeah.
And
this is because the Philistines told them they couldn't make swords.
Yeah, which is an interesting thing.
And they just were all like, okay.
Yeah. Well, it's not even that they couldn't make swords. It's that they couldn't have smiths. Because if they had smiths, then they would be able to have swords and stuff like that.
But
so they have to go to the Philistines to have their stuff.
Which makes, the Philistines obviously are doing it for their own personal benefit.
Right.
Right. I mean, for twofold.
It's gun control. This is why a bunch of right-wingers are so anti-gun control right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
the Philistines would do.
Yeah. It's and here I am saying like, well, why wouldn't you just be like, no, why are you telling us that we can't have people who can make swords? You're not in charge of us. But I guess maybe at some point they would have been.
They are in charge of them. Yeah. Because they do have dominion over, like, they're outnumbered or outfought, on.
I find it hard to believe that there weren't underground smiths.
I don't know if you would be able to really hide that. Or they would have the wherewithal to be able to. Yeah,
but it's not like the Philistines are like roaming around all of the small towns in Israel.
Yeah.
There's a whole underground moonshine thing happening or alcohol thing happening in this country under the noses of a lot of people back in the day.
Oh, I thought you meant now. I was like, no, this is something I'm not hearing about.
During Prohibition.
During Prohibition.
And you wouldn't think that would have been able to go unnoticed. And maybe it didn't. But I also think the same thing would apply back then is if you find enough hands to grease, you could totally make swords.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Saul and Jonathan had to get them somewhere.
Well, he's the king.
In Judges, you remember how God had to use the worst army to defeat the enemies in order to make it really glorious for him.
Right.
Yeah. It might be another thing like that. You have ghosts? Build them a shed with Sheds by Peter.
Good for all kinds of ghosts, such as Moses ghosts or Elijah ghosts.
Let's say you're out on a fishing boat in the middle of the night with several of your guy friends. Real normal like. And you see a ghost coming at you, walking on the water. What do?
You build them a shed.
You build them a shed with Sheds by Peter.
Let's say your buddy gets in trouble with the law and ends up crucified. You had yourself a real sad weekend. But it's Monday morning and you're on your way to work when he shows up with holes in his hands and feet. What do? You
build him a shed.
You build him a shed with
Sheds by Peter.
Do ghosts lie down in the sheds?
No, they stand up straight and stare at the bare walls.
What comfort.
Let's say you went on a spur of the moment overnight hike with a few of your guy friends. Real normal like. And you wake up and one of your buddies is talking to a couple of ghosts. What do? You
build them a shed.
You build them tree sheds.
To make sure they got space for the comforts.
Buy now and say, "Get thee behind me, sales tax."
Use promo code BSFA at checkout to fit 10% more ghost in your shed.
Sheds by Peter is only available in the continental United States, the only country where you can believe in God, aliens, and ghosts with no sense of irony. Forbidden honey. So this is Samuel 14. So this is an interesting story, but they just describe it really badly.
Okay.
So Jonathan, Saul's son, and his armor bearer decide to cross over the division between their people and the Philistines, right?
Okay.
Decides to cross over the battle line to the Philistines. And Jonathan proposes this test to see if the Lord will be favorable to them. Jonathan says that if the Philistines see them and are presumably like they don't recognize, oh, these are Israelites, but if they see them and they invite them to come up to them, they'll take it as a sign that God has delivered the Philistines into their hands, right? If they're like, hey, come over here, and you might be surprised to know that they do this. And his armor bearer has this line that I thought was funny. Do all that your mind inclines to. I am with you. As your mind is, so is mine. And it's just in my note here. It's just LOL. Okay. So the Philistines see them and invite them over. They're like, "Hey, let me show you something." And Jonathan,
but they see them and know that they're Israelites.
I don't think I can't remember now, and I don't have the text in front of me, but I can't remember if they knew that they were Israelites and they were just like not really threatened by them, or if it was like they couldn't see them very well and they thought they were other Philistines. But so they invite them over, and then Jonathan and his armor bearer climb up and strike down about 20 Philistines within this small area. There's panic in the Philistine camp. All the troops are thrown off. Even the garrison and the raiding parties are terrified. And of course, there's an earthquake that happens at the same time, which increases the panic.
Okay.
Saul's lookouts in Gibeah see all these people melting away, all the Philistines melting away and scattering. So Saul does a roll call of his troops and finds out that Jonathan and the armor bearer are missing. At this point, I'm kind of wondering why this armor bearer doesn't get a name. And Saul and all the troops join the battle. Now, in the New Revised Standard Version, which is what I typically read, it says, then Saul and all the people who were with him rallied and went into battle, and every sword was against each other, so that there was very great confusion. Now, that gives me very great confusion.
Because they didn't have swords.
Well, there was that, yeah. And yeah, it was weirdly worded. Other versions, though, say something more like this. Then Saul and all his men assembled and went into battle. They found the Philistines in total confusion, striking each other with their swords. Oh. So they were actually fighting each other.
Wow.
Yeah. And the
full-on panic mode.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it also mentions, even though this never really came up before or after, Hebrews who had previously sided with the Philistines switched their allegiance back to Israel. And other Israelites who had been hiding also joined the battle. So they just
the ones that were hiding in the rocks and caves and cisterns.
In the baggage. Yeah.
I just picture they're in this town battling and you see heads start popping up out of like vases and door frames and people wandering out of caves. Oh, we're winning now?
Oh, now I'll join.
Yeah.
Fair weather, friends. Now, Saul committed a very rash act on that day. He had laid an oath on the troops, saying, "Cursed be anyone who eats food before it is evening, and I have been avenged by my enemies." So none of the troops tasted food. All the troops came upon a honeycomb, and there was honey on the ground. When the troops came upon the honeycomb, the honey was dripping out, but they did not put their hands to their mouths, for they feared the oath. But Jonathan had not heard his father charge the troops with the oath. So he extended the staff that was in his hand and dipped the tip of it in the honeycomb and put his hand to his mouth, and his eyes brightened. Then one of the soldiers said, "Your father strictly charged the troops with an oath, saying, 'Cursed be anyone who eats food this day,' and so the troops are faint." Then Jonathan said, "My father has troubled the land. See how my eyes have brightened because I tasted a little of this honey? How much better if today the troops had eaten freely of the spoil taken from their enemies. For now the defeat of the Philistines has not been great. After they had struck down the Philistines that day from Michmash to Ajalon, the troops were very faint. So the troops flew upon the spoil and took sheep and oxen and calves and slaughtered them on the ground, and the troops ate them with the blood. Then it was reported to Saul, "Look, the troops are sinning against the Lord by eating with the blood." And he said, "You have dealt treacherously. Roll a large stone before me here." Saul said, "Disperse yourselves among the troops and say to them, let all bring their oxen or their sheep, and slaughter them here and eat, and do not sin against the Lord by eating with the blood." So all the troops brought their oxen with them that night and slaughtered them there. And Saul built an altar to the Lord. It was the first altar he had built to the Lord. So it's a really big no-no to really eat blood.
Sure.
In Judaism.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have to slaughter animals in a certain way that it removes the blood. And
right.
Stuff like that. It makes it kosher. But
yeah, and they were not doing that. They were
seems like a poor strategy to not feed your troops.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what Jonathan kind of calls out. Is, see how my eyes have brightened.
Right.
Just such a weird way of saying that.
Yeah. But also, is one honeycomb enough for that many people?
I don't think so. I don't know. I mean, I've seen some pretty big ones though, like photos of pretty big beehives. That
in walls in people's houses.
Yeah, like really, or even out in the wild when a beehive goes crazy, it can really go crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Also, we used to have a lot more bees in the world, unfortunately, than we have now.
True. But and then so who is it that said that they sinned against him? Or sinned against Lord?
I think God? It just said that somebody reported it.
Oh, because they were
Saul.
Eating. Because,
it was reported to Saul.
Because Saul told them not to eat.
Yeah.
And then they did.
So Jonathan ate before he was supposed to. Everybody else did it after they had already defeated the enemies.
Okay.
So that was fine that they were eating. But they were so hungry at that point, they didn't bother waiting to set up a sacrifice.
So they sinned against.
You're not supposed to eat. Apparently, you're not supposed to eat any meat without it being sacrificed to God.
Gotcha.
Okay.
They were so hungry they just ate.
Yeah, they just ate raw meat. It sounds like.
I gotcha, and that's the thing that offended God.
Right.
I see.
Or at least offended Samuel or Saul.
Right.
Offended Saul, even though they were actually eating all this food with all this meat with the blood and everything. God never steps in and is like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Right.
It's just Saul that seems to have a problem with it. Then Saul said, "Let us go down after the Philistines by night and despoil them until the morning light. Let us not leave one of them." They said, "Do whatever seems good to you." But the priest said, "Let us draw near to God here." So Saul inquired of God, "Shall I go down after the Philistines? Will you give them into the hand of Israel?" But he did not answer him that day. Saul said, "Come here, all you leaders of the people, and let us find out how this sin has arisen today. For as the Lord lives, who saves Israel, even if it is my son Jonathan, he will surely die." But there was no one among all the people who answered him. He said to all Israel, "You shall be on one side, and I and my son Jonathan will be on the other side." The people said to Saul, "Do what seems good to you." Then Saul said, "O Lord, God of Israel, why have you not answered your servant today? If this guilt is in me or in my son Jonathan, O Lord God of Israel, give Urim. But if this guilt is in your people Israel, give Thummim." And Jonathan and Saul were indicated by the lot, but the people were cleared. Then Saul said, "Cast the lot between me and my son Jonathan." And Jonathan was taken. Then Saul said to Jonathan, "Tell me what you have done." Jonathan told him, "I tasted a little honey with the tip of my staff that was in my hand. Here I am. I will die." Saul said, "God do so to me and more also. You shall surely die, Jonathan." Then the people said to Saul, "Shall Jonathan die, who has accomplished this great victory in Israel?" Far from it. As the Lord lives, not one hair of his head shall fall to the ground, for he has worked with God today. So the people ransomed Jonathan, and he did not die. Then Saul withdrew from pursuing the Philistines, and the Philistines went to their own place. Saul suggests attacking the Philistines, but the priest advises to get God's counsel first, but God doesn't answer because, he doesn't exist. And Saul realizes that God's silence for some reason is due to a sin.
Right, because that's what happens when you sin. God gets mad at you and stops talking to you.
Gives you silent treatment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes he just kills a shitload of you.
Sometimes he yells at you.
Yeah. Saul finds out that through casting lots that Jonathan broke the oath, though unintentionally. And then Saul is ready to kill Jonathan for breaking the oath, but the people intervene and say that Jonathan, because he had that big victory.
Right. Also, so the thing that supposedly would have angered God is the eating of the blood and the raw meat and the meat before anything was sacrificed.
Yeah.
Jonathan ate.
But then that's not what comes up. Yeah.
No, Jonathan tasted some honey.
Right.
God didn't say not to fucking eat.
Right. It was Saul
said not to eat.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he's ready to kill his son because he had some honey because he thinks that's why God's pissed off.
Yeah. Even
though God had nothing to do with this at all.
Right.
And that's probably why God's not talking to him.
Yeah.
Because he's like, oh, God, this asshole. I think I got to reboot this timeline.
Time for another flood. Yeah. So this one thing is interesting. He goes, if the guilt is on me or my son Jonathan, give Urim, but if the guilt is on the people, give Thummim. Right?
Thummim
is I don't know that I might be pronouncing these completely incorrectly.
But what are they?
So I asked ChatGPT about this. Urim and Thummim were tools used in ancient Israel to discern God's will. They were associated with the high priest's ephod, or ceremonial breastplate, and were used for making decisions, especially in matters that were beyond human knowledge or control. The exact nature of Urim and Thummim and how they were used is not clearly described in the Bible. They are mentioned a few times in the Old Testament, but details about them are scarce. The terms Urim and Thummim have been traditionally understood to mean lights and perfections, or perhaps curses and perfections. I don't know why those are so
right.
Lights and curses are so close, I guess. But some have suggested that they may have been a pair of objects, possibly stones, one indicating a positive yes answer, the other a negative no answer.
Yeah, so he flipped a coin.
Kind of, yeah. It's like a ceremonial way of flipping a coin.
Right.
It really, when I found out about this, I thought it was really interesting because I was like, this totally does give leaders back then a way of being like, well, it's in God's hands.
Right.
I'm going to just basically flip a coin and God can decide how we're going to proceed with something.
Right.
And then it's not my fault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just leaving it up to chance.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Wow. Ends with Saul turning on his own son.
Yeah, almost killing him, but not.
Almost killing him because of an arbitrary rule he made up.
Yeah, you remember the story? I think it was in Judges. The guy said, "If you give me victory, whatever comes out of my front door,
his daughter.
Yeah, I will sacrifice to you."
Right.
And then his daughter ends up coming out.
Right.
And yeah, I imagine that girl would, if she was alive to see this, would be like, wait, so you have the option of just saying no to this?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
well, she didn't have a massive victory under her belt either.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's true. He did. The dad did. So he would have had more weight in that story than Saul has in this one, because Saul is really just shit in the bed as a king.
Right.
For sure.
He doesn't get a lot of direct victories attributed to him.
Yeah. He's lost his chief of staff.
Yeah.
Definitely been told that he's going to be replaced.
Right.
A bunch of people went into hiding. They'd rather be hanging out in a cistern all day than coming and having his back.
Yeah. And we'll see in the next episode him pissing off God even more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weakening his own troops because he's a fucking moron.
Mm-hmm.
Willing to sacrifice his son because he thinks God is mad because his son ate some honey.
Yeah.
Based on a rule God did not make up.
Right. Some sort of magical honey that brightens your eyes.
That lion honey.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting in the next episode when we start getting into it. It sounds like if he existed and if any of this is actually like describing his behavior, he probably had some mental health issues, actually. We're going to find out.
Yeah.
That he probably had some mental health issues.
Well, having the fucking fate of an entire country placed on your back out of nowhere because God says so.
Right. When all you were doing was looking for some ass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Might fuck you up a little bit. Just a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
Especially when all of a sudden you're prone to prophetic
frenzy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, what is the point of this? Literally the point of this was to say that God didn't want there to be kings, but the people did, so they got what they wanted and it's not working out. It's just an extension of the judges. Like literally, it just feels like an extension of that. Just call it a different name.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's written by the same people.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. So anyway, next time we get introduced to David.
Okay.
So we'll meet him for the first time.
Right on.
And
Giant.
David and Goliath.
Giant.
So you're definitely not going to want to miss next episode.
Right on.
Yeah, right on.
Right on.
So with that, they all lived miserably ever after. Thank you so much for checking out our podcast. Help us grow the audience by sharing us with your friends or giving us a share on social media. And we love hearing from you. You can reach out on our website at bsfa.cc. You suspect.
I'm putting you on notice. How about them apples?
How about them apples?
Applesauce, bitch.
It is funny in Jay and Bob Strike Back because it seems like he's doing a bad Boston accent.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about this.
Well, I don't know about this, Will. I don't like the sound of them apples.
Stupid face.
Gotta watch that movie again.